This is an historic day for the Metropolitan Opera as we present the live in HD premiere of X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X. I'm Angela Bassett, and I am delighted to be your host. Composer Anthony Davis' epic work captures the life of the fiery civil rights leader from his childhood in Michigan to his assassination in 1965 in New York City, only a few short miles north of this stage. In Spike Lee's biographical film starring Denzel Washington, I played Betty Shabazz, the wife of Malcolm X. So it's a personal thrill to see Malcolm's story come to life so powerfully on the stage at the Met. The idea that X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X, would be playing at the Met would have been a long shot until recently, but X is the third opera by a Black composer to be performed here over the past 3 seasons. X, which premiered in 1986, was the very first opera by revered composer and jazz man Anthony Davis. He created this groundbreaking work from a story by his brother, Christopher Davis, and set to a libretto by his cousin, the poet and playwright, Tulani Davis. Their interpretation of the life of Malcolm X is having a triumphant return in Anthony's newly revised version, directed by Robert O'Hara. Baritone Will Lieberman stars as Malcolm, portraying his journey over the course of the opera's 3 acts, from petty criminal Detroit Red to visionary activist Malcolm X to devout Muslim El-Hajj Malik El-Shabazz. Soprano Leah Hawkins sings the dual roles of Malcolm's mother Louise and wife Betty. Tenor Victor Ryan Robertson is the hustler, street, and the Nation of Islam leader Elijah Muhammad. In this highly original new production, Robert O'Hara frames the opera as a Afro-futuristic vision of the life of Malcolm X, opening with a crash landing of a spaceship right on the Met stage. In another historic first, today's performance is being streamed live into the legendary Apollo Theater in Harlem, one of Malcolm's favorite haunts when he first arrived in New York City as a young man. Maestro Kazim Abdullah is ready in the pit. Here is X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X. With a score by Anthony Davis, a story by his brother Christopher, and a libretto by their cousin Tulani, X, The Life and Times of Malcolm X is truly a family affair. We spoke to the Davises about their collaboration and what it feels like to see X enjoying such a renaissance today. Leah, hello.
Hello.
And brava on your superb dual performance in Act 1 as Malcolm's mother and as his wife in Act 2. Now, this may be unfair, but which of these 2 roles were more satisfying to play?
Oh, it's hard to choose. They both are satisfying for different reasons. I think Louise, dramatically speaking, gives me a mad scene. I get to go a little crazy on stage, and I've never gotten to do that. It does cost me some because I do cry after singing the scene because she was a real person, so it's very real to me. And then Betty, though, I get to come back and be grounded and be tender and loving and caring, and that's really nice to do. So I can't choose.
What does it mean to you to play roles like this on this stage?
Well, on one hand, it's a dream come true, but also I've entered the industry at a really interesting time in that I've gotten to sing 3 different operas where I'm playing real-life Black women, and I'm getting to explore Black womanhood and all the different facets, and that's a really beautiful thing that I'm really grateful for, and it's important. These ladies deserve to be on this big stage.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Before the opening night of X, you met with Malcolm's daughter, Dr. Ilyasah Shabazz. Did meeting her provide any insights into portraying her mother?
Oh, yes. She was the one that told me that her mother was so kind, so loving, would say, dear heart, like you said in the movie. She would say that to people, dear, my dear heart. It really changed the way I thought of her because I wasn't sure what I wanted to bring to her just yet. And also she said I looked like her mother, which was really special.
Leah, thank you for your incredible talent, and thank you for speaking with me.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. Act 1 ended with Malcolm's angry soliloquy about an unjust white world. When Act 2 begins, a few years have elapsed, and he is still in prison, where he is visited by his brother Reginald, who tells him that hope and rebirth beckon in the teachings of Elijah Muhammad, leader of the Nation of Islam. Here is Act 2. Well, bravo.
Oh, thank you so much.
You don't appear until the end of Act 1, but that aria, powerful. Tell us more about that moment.
Yeah, at this point in the opera, we don't see the transformation into Malcolm X as a leader just yet, but I think this embodies so much about Malcolm and what he stood for and what he had to offer that was so different than any historical leader of his time, you know, in terms of how soundly and boldly he was able to pinpoint the issues and injustices of Black people during that time and his own injustices.
You know, I know from experience how daunting it can be to play an historical figure,
Yes,
right?
yes.
How did you prepare for the role?
I did a lot of research. I read the autobiography. And, you know, growing up, I always knew the story of Malcolm X. You know, my dad was a history teacher, so we always revisit it. But it wasn't until, you know, diving into this role and really reading the biography, looking at, you know, the documentaries, of course, watching the iconic movie.
All right.
And you just really appreciate, you know, all the things that he's went through in his life and what he was able to
Yes.
accomplish.
Now,
and
I
to do.
love the music of
Yeah.
Anthony Davis.
Yes, yes, yes.
What makes for you this score so rewarding or challenging?
It's definitely both. This is probably the hardest thing I think I've ever had to learn in terms of, you know, just the rhythmic complexities and the melodic structures, but it is so rewarding. And when you really listen closely, it's a masterpiece with all of the things that he incorporates from the evolution of jazz and how Malcolm was so close to jazz. He talks about that a lot. African dance, you know, Wagner and all those things that are mixed in. It really is a rewarding thing when it all clicks. Yeah.
2 years ago, I had the pleasure of seeing you star in Terence Blanchard's Fire Shut Up in My Bones, the first Black opera by a Black composer in the Met's history. The tide really seems to be turning in terms of Black representation in opera. What's it like to be a part of that?
It's a tremendous honor and something that I feel is one of my callings as an artist, to be a champion of works by BIPOC composers and to, you know, be a part of the Met's chapter when we're telling more diverse stories and stories of inclusion. And I realize that I'm standing on the shoulders of the many great artists that have come before me.
Oh, congratulations,
Yeah.
Will.
Thanks so much.
Thank
I
you
really
for
appreciate
spending
it.
this time with me. In Acts 1 and 2, we saw the extraordinary transformation and rise of Malcolm X. As history knows, he predicted his own early demise. Here is the dramatic conclusion of X, the life and times of Malcolm X.